This is Excel 2016, Module 7, Part 9. We're going to begin working with macros. So the first thing you need to understand is what a macro is. When I start, we're going to create this macro by recording it. You can also just create them by typing in code. In this class, you will only create them by recording them. So what a macro is, it's a small program. It tells Excel what to do, and it saves those instructions. So a user who is not familiar with Excel can use this program or macro to complete a task even though they don't know how to do those steps in Excel. So for example, on this first macro, we will be printing an area of our worksheet to a PDF. So we're going to have to do some page layout setups, such as setting in a print area, such as defining how to set up the margins. We are going to add a header, and then we're going to save all that information in a program. So when a user who is working our registration booth has a customer and then they're ready to print out their receipt to a PDF, we don't have to worry about, do they know how to do all the steps? Will they remember everything they have to do? All they have to do is run the macro. And we can make it pretty simple for them to be able to do that. But a couple things you want to remember for this class is every click, every keystroke, anything you do in Excel is being recorded. And when it comes to your SAM homework, any extra clicks that it finds, if there are too many of those, it may mark it incorrect. So one thing that I have found that sometimes causes students problems is when they try to have a Word document with the instructions and then the Excel program both open at the same time. So what happens is I'm recording my macro, and then I get to where I need to go down further in my Word document for more instructions. So I click out of Excel and I scroll down. Then I have to click back into Excel to continue working. Those things are adding extra clicks into my macro. So I would encourage you to print your instructions so that you don't have to go in and out of Excel, adding a lot of unnecessary clicks and typing. I would also encourage you to do a run-through. Practice the steps that you're going to have to do in the macro one time so that you know what you're doing. Then the second time, actually go in and create the macro. That way you won't add extra steps making mistakes along the way. We will learn how to edit a macro. However, it's much easier to record it correctly in the first place than to try to figure out which lines of code to take out so that SAM will mark it correct. So I encourage you to both print the instructions and practice the steps at least once so that you're comfortable with them before you start trying to record the macro. Let's get back into our winter workbook. Okay, so you can see in our winter workbook, we have this area here in kind of a golden color that is our receipt. We want to print that area to a PDF each time we enter registration information. So we are going to come up here to our Developer tab. You should have already added that. If you haven't, go back and review the earlier video and it will show you how to add that. Next, we're going to click to record a macro. Now, it's not started yet. It hasn't started recording until you leave this first screen. On this screen, you're going to give it a name, PDF receipt, and Control R. Now, I want you to pay attention. If I have cap locks on accidentally, and I type Control R, you'll notice now that it's a different keystroke. It's Control Shift R. So you want to make sure you're careful when you're typing in that keystroke and that you look at what it says on the screen and make sure no additional keys were accidentally pressed. We're going to be storing our macro in this workbook. Notice you could keep a personal macro workbook. There are other options, but we will be using this one. And then finally, we have the description. So with this description, this is optional. However, if you're going to be sharing workbooks with other people, or you're concerned that you're doing some volunteer work and you're setting this up and someone else may have to fix it next year or later on, if you put a description in here of what you are trying to accomplish, it will help someone else later if they try to make changes. So we're going to type created 12/1/2017 and then save receipt area range A18 through and a colon in Excel ranges means through F37 as a PDF file and a period. If you have a description on your homework or on an exam, just be careful to ensure that you've typed it exactly the way they have it. Now what you're going to see when I click OK, it's going to then start recording. You're going to see this button change. It's no longer going to say record a macro. It's going to say stop recording. Once you see it say stop recording, anything you actually click on or type will in fact be recorded and become part of your macro. When you hover over something so that you can see the screen tips, that's not being recorded, but if you actually click on it, it will be. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to select the range of A18 through F37. So we'll click on A18, go over and go all the way down to F37. Next, we have to go to our Page Layout tab. And the first thing we're going to do is we are going to choose this print area. And on that drop-down list, choose Set Print Area. Next, we are going to open the dialog box for printing. So to do that, you're going to click this bottom corner for the Page Setup dialog. We're going to go to the Margins tab. And we are going to check the box to center the page horizontally. Then let's say we wanted to add a header. So I'm going to come over here to the header, and I'm going to choose a custom header. And I want it to have the current date on the first line. Then I'm going to hit enter. And I'm going to add the system time on the second line so that I can see when each receipt was printed. And now I'm done on the dialog box, so I'm going to click OK. Next, I actually want to export this to a PDF, so I'm going to choose File, Export, and I'm going to choose the second option that says Create PDF XPS Document. And then I'm going to choose the button that says Create PDF/XPS. This is going to open up a Save As type window. I can make sure I verify the location. I can give it a name. We'll call it receipt. And then once I have that correct, I want it to say it's going to open after publishing. I am going to click Publish. Now, because I already had one there, it's going to ask me if I want to replace it. So I'm going to say yes. And it's going to open up a PDF. Now, mine opened up on another window, so I'm going to move it over here. So you can see it did, in fact, open up a PDF. So now what I want to do is I want to close this, and then I'm going to go back and I'm going to undo some of that formatting that we did. So I'm going to come up here to the print area, and I'm going to say to clear that. And then I'm going to open up the dialog box, and I'm going to go to Margins, and I'm going to remove that horizontal. I'm going to uncheck the box. Then I'm going to go to Header Footers, go into my custom header, and delete both of these options by highlighting and clicking Delete. Click OK, and click OK. So once I'm all done, my instructions say to make A1 the active cell. So what that means is you're going to scroll all the way up, and you're going to click on A1. Clicking in a cell makes it the active cell. Then we're going to stop recording. So to stop recording, we have to get back to our Developer tab and click the Stop Recording button. Okay, so next we're going to test the macro. Excuse me. I am going to click somewhere else. I want to make sure that if I start, for example, in D15, does it really move me back to A1 when I finish? So there's a couple ways that we can run our macro. So I'm going to start out by clicking this macro button. You will see a list of all the macros that we have in our workbook, and you can click Run. When you do that, you will see that it'll open up a PDF. I close the PDF. It does a bunch of stuff, and I can't see where my there it is. You can see it did in fact take me back to A1. So I'm going to click somewhere else. I'm going to click at B16. And this time, instead of running the macro by opening the macro button, I'm going to use the shortcut key. So we said hold the control key down and hit R, and it will run the macro. And again, you can see that it created a PDF, and it took me back to A1. So after you create your macro, you always want to make sure that you test it. Make sure that if you click macro button and run, that it works. Step into is a technique that you can use that'll walk through it one step at a time. People use that if they can't figure out what's not working. Edit we'll talk about a little bit later. If you realize you messed this up and it's just not working at all the way it's supposed to, you could come in here and delete it. The other way to test it, and you should do this also, is you should try the shortcut key so that you know Control R will really run your macro. Now I do want to show you in the next segment how to properly save this macro. You cannot just save your worksheet or your workbook the way it is. If you do not make changes to the way you're saving it, you will lose all the macros. So make sure you come back to the next section and review carefully how to save a workbook once you have a macro in it.